Hey everybody, thought I would do a presentation of replay baseball. Haven't done a game of replay baseball in quite some time, so I thought I'd bring that back out. Not doing it as a live video, just doing it as a regular video, and then maybe do a little tutorial and play a bit of a game. Don't know if I'll play the whole game, but I'll at least play most of it, hopefully. This is primarily for a tutorial for people who haven't played the game at all or not in a long time. So I wanted to present the game engine and let you guys who haven't seen it yet maybe get an exposure to it. There's also a computer version of this, which is a very good game also. But even if you like the computer version, I think the card and dice version kind of gives you more of an insight as to the game engine itself. This game I'm going to play is just a random exhibition, the 2015 Arizona Diamondbacks and the 2015 Colorado Rockies. And I'm taking a chance by playing this game in Coors Field, so Coors Field may produce some extra offense, and I tend to like pitchers duels, but hey, I'm taking a chance, see what happens. And there are certain results where the ballpark card is brought into play, and we'll get to that later. But when you get the team sets, I bought the 2015 season. When you get the team sets, you get a card, overall team card that's got the year, their record, where they finished in the division that year, who their manager was, and then a primary lineup or I guess maybe a suggested lineup against both right and left-handed pitching. So the starters I've got on for today's game are two lefties, Jorge De La Rosa for the Colorado Rockies and Robbie Ray for the Diamondbacks, both lefties. Now the game engine itself operates with 3 dice, and they're always looked upon in red, white, and blue order. That's the order of operations. No matter what the numbers are, this is the order they're read. They are looked at as red, white, and blue. So this would be a 1-3-5, not a 5-3-1 or anything else. It's a 1-3-5. Now the red die has a purpose, and the purpose of the red die, it's the column die. It tells you which column to look on for both the pitcher card and the batter card. So in this mock at bat, we have Ender Inciarte for the Diamondbacks against Jorge De La Rosa. So column 1, you can see here on the top of both the cards that these numbers are in red, and that's to correspond with the red die, to remind you that the red die controls the column check on both the pitcher and the hitter. So in this case, we know we're in column 1 on both the hitter and the pitcher. Then we move on to the white die, and the white die has black numerals, and the batter card on the side has black numbers. So that tells you or reminds you that this white die with black numbers controls the row selection of the batter card. So in this case, that is a 3. So we go over to Ender Inciarte, look at column 3, and we already know we're in row 1. So his 1 and 3, we cross-reference these columns and rows, and we get a number 2. So that's the number 2. Hopefully that shows up. Let me try to get it a little bit closer if I can, so that you can see this without messing everything up here. That is a 2. So that means that in this at-bat, Ender Inciarte will bring the number 2 to the table. All right, the last die is the blue die. Well, that was a 5, and I just knocked it over, didn't I? All right, so the blue die tells you that that's the row for the pitcher, and I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but the pitcher numbers here are in blue. So that reminds you that this goes to the pitcher. So the row for the pitcher, in this case, is going to be a 5. So we do column 1, which was from the red die, cross-reference it to row 5, and that gives you a number 2 right there. So we have a 2 from Jorge De La Rosa. We have a 2 from Ender Inciarte. And using your first grade math, that is a total of 4. So then we go to a chart book. Now there's two different versions of the book, of the results book. When I bought the game, it came with this spiral bound playbook. And you go to the situation of the red die, because the red die tells you which page in the book to look for. So in this case, if you look at the book, you can see it's got column 1. It's also in red to remind you that the red die controls which page you're on. So we're in column 1, and the other way to do this, it's what I purchased after the fact as an add-on, was this trifold book, or trifold results. Let's see if I can get this for you. If it's folded up into thirds, it looks like this. But then when you open it up, it will give all the results spread out depending on what column we're in. In this case, we're in column number 1, so for camera purposes, I'll try to condense this into a column 1 reading. So let's bring this up here to column 1, as you can see. And our number was 4. That's the number we had from NCarte and from De La Rosa, was a 2 and a 2 for 4. And in column 1, row 4, it says it's a strikeout. So we know that that at-bat resolved was a strikeout because the number 2 through 6 is column 1. All right. Now, just to give you some logic on the game engine itself, column 1 is where your high strikeout pitchers are going to find their strikeouts. And the high strikeout batters are going to find their strikeouts. Column 2 is also going to be some strikeouts. It's also the place where there are injuries will be taken into account in column number 2. There will be also some strikeouts there, and if they're high numbers, you'll get some extra base hits possibilities in column 2. Column 3 is where you get a lot of your singles. You might get a few extra base hits, but it's primarily the guys who have a high batting average. If they roll into the 3 column, it's a pretty good chance they're going to get a hit. And if a pitcher gives up a lot of hits, it's a pretty good idea he's going to give up a lot of hits. However, if a pitcher does not give up a lot of hits, then he can stifle that with his results in his card. Column 4 is where you're going to go your fielding possibilities. That's going to engage the fielder. As you can see here on De La Rosa's card, all the columns have numbers on them except this blue column 4, and that's the fielding column. So when you get to that column, the row on the blue die is going to tell you which fielder is engaged, and then we'll check the fielder's fielding ability on plays in column 4. Column 5 is where most of your walks are going to come from. And if you have a pitcher that has a lot of walks or who walked a lot of batters, then he's going to be in trouble when you get to column 5. Column 6 is going to be your home run column. It's going to have some singles in there. There are some outs, obviously. Some strikeouts in there, but primarily column 6, when you see that, that's a potential home run column right there. In fact, as far as I can tell, other than ballpark results, that's the only standard column that has the home run is in column 6. So that's the introductory for Replay Baseball, the how-to, and how to do a potential play. Now let's look at the player cards a little more closely in relation to what I just said about these columns. So if you look at Jorge De La Rosa, his column 1, remember column 1 has a lot of strikeouts in it. Pitchers who have 1s and 2s in this column generally get a lot of strikeouts. If you got 3s and 4s up here, you're probably going to get regular pop outs or fly outs. But since he's got 2s here, he's got a good chance for strikeouts. Same with column 2. There's 1s there, so that's going to be good for him trying to stop some hits and get some strikeouts. Column 3, he's got some 1s here, and the game engine for pitchers cards, it's set up so that lower numbers are your better numbers. So if you got a 1, that's the best you can have in these columns. See, he's got a 2 and a 3 down here, so if the blue die is a 5 or 6, he could be in trouble. Go over to column 5. Unfortunately for De La Rosa, he must have walked a lot of people because he's got some 5s here, and there's 1 4, but most of it are 5s. And then in column 6, he must have given up some home runs too, probably as a result of Coors Field, because you see he's got 4s here, a couple of 3s there. Now there's also a B grade, which is like their when they're tired. So once they reach their point of weakness per se, whether it be based on number of batters faced, innings pitched, or ineffectiveness, they will switch to their B grades, and their B grades are generally speaking a lot worse than what their columns would have been up here. You see in column 1 he's up to a 3 already. Column 3 he's up to a 3. He's got a lot of hits. Column 6 rather, he's up to the 4, so that's a good chance for home runs to go against him there. Let's look at the batter card. Ender Inciarte. All right, if you have low numbers in column 1, that means you're going to probably strike out. So he's got a couple of 2s there, but everything else here, 15 is going to probably be a hit. 35 is going to pretty much be an out. 45 is going to be an out. So unless he gets that 1-1, he's probably going to be out. Column 2, he's got not a very good chance in column 2 on these 16s. That's not going to help him any. The 11 would be a hit. And this 55 here with the shaded area, when the result ends up in a shaded area, that's when we invoke the ballpark. And I'll try to roll an example on using that. Column 3 is where you get your base hits a lot of times. So again, there's a ballpark factor there where the ballpark can either take away a hit or give him a hit. Let's see here. The 3-6 is one of the places where you get a left-right split. It is on that 3-6 result. So against a right-hander, he would get a base hit in this result of 3-6. Against a left-hander, he would make an out. So the 3-6 is one of the places that checks left-right splits. The other one is column 6. You can see that he has 2 numbers here. The number to the left of the slash you would read if he's facing a lefty, and the number to the right of the slash is what you read when he's facing a right-hander. And there's also a ballpark effect in the 6-6 column. That's pretty standard on most cards. 6-6 usually has the shaded column. In fact, if I'm looking at this correctly, most of the cards are going to have a shaded column in 2, a shaded column in 3, and a shaded column in 6. So they will, and these are optional. You don't have to use these ballpark effects. You can go with the original result. I always like to use the ballpark effects. I think it just adds something to the game. But in this instance, let's look at 16 and 60, for example. If he were to roll a column 6 and a white 2, a red 6 and a white 2, that would put him in this column here. If he were facing Robbie Ray, he would be looking at a 16 because Robbie Ray's a lefty. And in column 6 of 16, anything you add to 16 is going to be a fly out. So he would make an out there. However, if he's facing a right-handed pitcher, that would be a 60. And in the playbook, a 60, anything the pitcher does will result in that being a double. So he's going to double if he's facing a righty, and he's going to fly out if he's facing a lefty. Down here at the bottom, again, we got these 2 numbers, 16 and 9. If he's facing a lefty, he's right back up to where he started here with that 16, which is a fly ball. However, a 9 is going to almost guarantee he's going to hit a home run, unless the pitcher has a 1 or a 2 column in here. But if they're up there in the, like De La Rosa is with the 4s and the 5s, that's going to make that 9 into a 12 and a 13, and 12 and 13s and 14s are home runs. So that's where the left-right split comes into play as well. So you've got it not only here, but you got it in a 3-6. There's 2 places that most batters will have a left-right split, depending on how they performed, of course. So look at somebody like A.J. Pollock. He doesn't have that because apparently his numbers versus lefty and righty were pretty comparable. So, they didn't feel the need to make anything extra on that. All right, you'll notice also some symbols on the card like asterisks, pluses, a caret sign, these little things there that go on. The steals in this game are driven by the cards. I believe there is a manual steal option, but I always use the steal option that comes with the game. And so if the player has a star or a plus sign and he reaches first base and second base is unoccupied, then in the back of the book you roll and see whether he stole a base, got caught stealing, or had to hold. Those are the options there. Then on the caret sign, that's a potential sacrifice fly. Because in the game book, if you don't strike out with these low numbers, your next three numbers, or four numbers rather, are either going to be pop outs to the infield, or if they have this caret symbol, that carries it to the outfield for a sac fly. So if it's a runner on third, less than 2 outs, and he were to get a 1-5, that would be a sac fly. It would not be a pop up. So the caret symbol says he must hit a couple sacrifice flies throughout the year. All right, trying to think of what else to go over before going through a sample of play. Let's see, there is a third base coach, an automated third base coach little sheet here that you can take the extra base by using this third base coach. And you roll a couple dice and figure out what you're going to do. You take the runner's speed and the arm of the outfielder in question, and you can try for that. There's also an action chart, and let me find a result on a player card that would take us to an action chart. Let's look at Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt, anytime they have a letter behind their number, that means it's an action chart possibility. So this is in column 5. So let's look at the column 5 in this book here. And it says, let's see if I can find here. It says, where'd it go? Well, I don't see it on here. But it is a action chart result. This says M. Let's see here. Some of the others say check column M of the action chart. But some of these other ones, the letter behind it will automatically take you there. And the action chart talks about stolen bases, pickoffs, caught stealings, wild pitches, balks, you name it. And so when they have these numbers behind here, and they reach base, that's the other caveat. If he makes an out here, then you obviously ignore that. But if he were, say, to walk and reach base, then you would go to the C column on the action chart. The action chart has columns A through M. So if he reached, you would go to column C on the action chart, roll 2d6s, and see what it said. So that's another one of the little things in the game that adds to that. One of the things I hadn't talked about yet that is worth mentioning is the quality of the cards themselves. I mean, they're really thick card stock, and they're nice and colorful. The ballpark card, you get a nice picture of Coors Field here in this case. And this is the newer version of the where you roll 2d6s for your result rather than just 1d6. So this is the updated version, I guess you'd call it. So when I ordered the set, this is what I requested. I think you get those unless you request otherwise. If you request, you can request the old ones if you want. So again, the quality of the card itself, they feel really good in your hand. They look good on your table. And when you compare it to something like Stratomatic, where those player cards are kind of flimsy, this is kind of nice. So it's kind of nice to sit there and roll the dice and hold these in your hand, and they're just really high quality cards. Okay, so another thing that they do with these left-rights, it's not just the batter that has left-right possibilities. Some pitchers do as well. I'm going to just pause this video because I'm about ready to sneeze. Hold on. Okay, had to pause. I didn't want you to have to deal with me sneezing or coughing. Okay, so a pitcher like Christian Friedrich, he is a lefty, but obviously in his stats, he did much better against lefties than he did righties. So, and you can see the numbers in blue are a lot less than the numbers in white. So when he faces a lefty, when the blue die is a 1 or a 2 against a lefty, he's going to be in this row, the top row. If he's facing a right-hander and it's a 1 or a 2, he's going to be in the top row of the white version. And then 3 and 4 is going to take him to the middle row and so forth. So that factors in the left-right splits of the pitcher. So that means these are extreme pitchers. So he had to have extreme splits, left-righty, to get a card made like that. But that's just another way that the game factors it in. There's a relief pitcher, Boone Logan, the same way, has those results. And there's also right-handers, and they are in pink. It'll be a pink R, and the right-handed column down here will be in pink, and the white column, or maybe up here in pink. I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me off the top of my head to know how that's done. The other result they have is ground ball, fly ball pitchers. So let's look at reliever Rafael Betancourt. And if you look at Jorge De La Rosa, his column 4 are all fielders, where they're ground balls to the fielders. Well, Betancourt is a fly ball pitcher. So if he gets 4 row 2 or 4 row 5, there is no infielder. It's got C6, and that means you divert to column 6 to get your result. That means he gave up balls in the air. Could be a home run, could be a fly out, could be anything, but you don't get the ground ball like you would for a regular pitcher. So he was a high fly ball pitcher. There's also the inverse of that. Some pitchers in column 6 will have a C4, which means they were ground ball pitchers, and that means you divert back to a ground ball when that result comes up. So yet another way that the cards are factored in with the statistics. So there's a lot to like about Replay Baseball. It's not very hard to learn. In fact, it's one of the easier games to learn. In fact, I would probably suggest it as a beginner if anyone has not played any type of board game yet, baseball board game, as opposed to something a little more complicated like Stratomatic. I think Replay Baseball is probably the most simplistic of all the games. It's kind of on par with Stratomatic Basic, maybe. But you get a lot more in-depth results than you would Stratomatic Basic, in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and, since I've gotten that preamble out of the way, and if anybody's seen this game before, you've probably been bored to tears for the last 20 minutes, but I'm always cognizant of people who maybe have not seen this game before, maybe they haven't seen the channel before. They're just perusing YouTube. I know a couple of years, a year or so ago, that's what I used to do. That's how I found people like Steve Tower on After Further Review, or Al Wilson with his Hands on Game channel, or Tabletop Earl Shamblin on his Tabletop channel, was by just searching YouTube under baseball or board games or whatever, and it just popped up. So I try to be aware of people who have not seen the game at all or not in a long time and might be interested in it. So I'm not a salesman. I don't have any affiliation with Replay Baseball. I do think it's a really good game. I think Pete Ventura, the guy who updated this game a few years ago from its original creator, I think has done a really good job at modernizing the game, keeping it fresh, and giving you lots of options to play of how you want to play it. So rather than play a whole game and make this a 2-hour video, I'm going to go ahead and take everything I just brought to you and go over maybe an inning or so of a game and try to play it at, first I'm going to play it very, very slow so that you can see the game engine, and then perhaps I'll do another inning at regular speed so that you can get an idea of, once you get comfortable with this game, how fast it'll play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the dice, hopefully so you can see them here in the tray, and then I'm going to show the player card involved, the batter, point out the number that he has gotten. I'll also point out the number on the pitcher card, get a total, and then I'll just read what's in the book, because it's really going to be kind of hard to move this camera around. It's kind of stationary right now, and I'm just going to have to read what it says, and hopefully you guys will trust me that I'm reading it correctly. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start as if this were the game. So we're going to have Jorge De La Rosa in there, and he's facing Ender Inciarte. This is a lefty on a lefty matchup. So and the only time this comes into play is if we roll a 3 and a 6, or a 6-2 and a 6-6. Those are the three chances that the lefty-righty will come into play on any given at bat with this combination of player and pitcher and batter. So here's the first pitch. All right, we got a column 6. That's a chance for home runs and long fly balls. So again, we read it red, white, and blue. So in this case, on Inciarte's column 6, on De La Rosa's column 6, Inciarte has a 6. So we go down to the row 6, column 6, and we get this ballpark. We get the ballpark qualities, and we also have the split within the ballpark qualities. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the ballpark, and the ballpark card has 3 columns to check. Column 2, column 3, was it a hit, or column 6. Since the white die was a 6, since the red die was a 6, that means we're checking column 6. So what we're going to do is re-roll the red and white die, and we keep the blue die handy because we may need that. So we're going to roll the red and white die and read them what they call replay style, which means that would be a 42, not a 6. And that would be a 52, not a 7, or a 25. It's red and white, so that would be a 52. So we're going to roll the 2d6s, and then whatever range it falls into, that's the new number that's going to go in place of that 16 that's right there. So we're going to roll 2d6s, and Inciarte is a lefty, so we're going to be referencing the top column because that's the one for left-handed batters. So I'll roll the 2d6s, and that's a 35. So it comes up as a 35. So we look at 35, and that changes to a 9. So his 16 just got changed to a 9 because of Coors Field. So we said 9 is highly probable to be a home run. So in this case, the blue 4, we hadn't forgot about that. That's De La Rosa's 4 column. That's a 3. The 6 and the 4 make a 3. So we add the 3 to the 9, and we get a 12. And the 12 is a possible home run. Now in this case, I will show the chart because it's an interesting result. Move this out of the way a little bit. Let's see if I can really get this into focus here. When is the 12? You see the 12 is a home run down the line, but there is an asterisk. And the asterisk is it's a possible single rather than a home run. So we're going to roll 1d6, and if it's a 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 6, it's a home run. But if the 1d6 is a 1, it turns into a single. So it's almost, I can't say guaranteed home run, but it's, you do the odds yourself. It's 5 out of 6 chance that it's going to be a home run, and this is all because of Coors Field. So we're going to roll, let me get my thing back here in place. We're going to roll the 1d6, and if it's anything other than a 1, it's going to be a home run. And it's a 6, so it's a home run. So Ender Inciarte, instead of flying out, which is what he would have done had it stayed a 16, that ballpark effect turned it into a home run. And just like that, the Diamondbacks would be ahead 1-0. All right, next man in the order is A.J. Pollock, and he will step to the plate against De La Rosa. And we get a 5-5-3. Now again, column 5 is where you get a lot of walks. And De La Rosa has a lot of high numbers, so this is probably going to be a walk. But we'll have to check it out for sure. So column 5, and the white die is a 5, so that's row 5. Cross-reference, that's a 15. So on A.J. Pollock, that is a 15. Column 5, row 5 is a 15. For De La Rosa, column 5, row 5 is a 5. So that's a total of 20 in column 5. And a 20 in column 5 is actually an infield single. So I'll show this if I can. Sometimes this board is a little bit tough to get to with the camera. But on column number 5, which is right here, on number 20 is an infield single, and it says check column M of the action chart for further on-base action. So this is a action chart result. So we're going to go to our action chart, and it says check column M, which is the far right-hand column. So we're going to check column M, roll 2 D6s, and we may need the blue die also. We'll roll it just in case, and see if we've got a wild pitch, if we've got a pickoff, if we've got a balk, pass ball, who knows. So we're going to roll all three, but we're going to reference the red and white and add them up together. That's a 7, so we get a 7 on the red and white combination. So we go to column M and a 7. That's a wild pitch, or WP, but it may not be a wild pitch. We'll see. If the pitcher has a good wild pitch rating, it may not be. So it says here, if blue die is higher than the wild pitch rating, all runners advance on the wild pitch. So the blue die is a 4. The wild pitch rating of De La Rosa is only a 1, so obviously he threw a lot of wild pitches because it doesn't take much to get above 1. So since the 4 is greater than the 1, that would be a wild pitch. However, oh no, I take it back. So what would happen is Pollock would single, and then before Goldschmidt or while Goldschmidt's at bat, it would be a wild pitch, and that will move Pollock to second base. So now we have Paul Goldschmidt. So Paul Goldschmidt would be the next batter in line, and we have Pollock at second after the wild pitch. De La Rosa will pitch to Goldschmidt, and this is a 2-4-1. All right, so column 2 for Goldschmidt. Column 2 is here. The row is white die is a 4, which means we're row 4. So row 4, column 2 is a 16. Row 4, column 2 is a 16. For De La Rosa, he's in row 2, column 1. So row 2, column 1 is a 1. So that's a total of 17 in column 2. And a 17 in column 2 has an interesting little caveat here. It might be very hard to see this. This board is going to be hard to put on camera, I got a feeling. 17 column 2 is right here. It says strikeout with bases empty. Well, the bases are not empty because the runner's on second, or a fly out to center with men on base. With a run on base and less than 2 outs, roll 1 die. If the die is odd, batter strikes out. If roll is even, scores a sacrifice fly. That's only for runners on third. So in this case, runners on second, so it simply is a fly out. It would have been a strikeout, but instead it's a fly out to center field for out number 1. So that would bring up the cleanup hitter, Mark Trumbo, right fielder. And, right fielder. So he will step up against De La Rosa. And another column 6 result. So we've got a 6-2-1. All right, on Trumbo, a 6 and a 2 is a number 8. On De La Rosa, a 6 and a 1, column 6, row 1 is a 2. That's a 10 in column 6. And a 10 in column 6 is a single to center field. It says runner on second base may try to score and defense may try for runner at the plate. If there is a throw home, roll die versus runner's speed. If the die is higher, he is out. If it's not higher, he scores. And then the runner on first would go to third if there was a runner on first. So the speed of the runner at second base is A.J. Pollock, and his speed, if we look at Pollock, he is a 5. So that's the second highest you can get. He's pretty good speed. So it's a 5C. So that means a 5 means he's got very good speed. It says we're going to roll 1 die versus runner's speed. If die is higher, he is out. If not, he scores. So basically, we have to roll 1 die. If it's a 6, then he's out. Anything else, he'll score. So it's a 2. That means he scored. So it's a single for Trumbo, and Trumbo will knock in A.J. Pollock for the second run of the inning. And the Diamondbacks would be up by a score of 2-0. And Yasmani Tomas will step to the plate. And De La Rosa's getting knocked around early. It's a 1-4-5. Now, the column 1 can give results of strikeouts, but we'll see. Tomas, a 1-4 is a 35. 1 and a 4 is a 35. De La Rosa, a 1 and a 5 is a 2. So we got a total of 37 in column 1, and a 37 in column 1 is a ground ball to second. With the infield halfway, it's scored as a double play. Well, with 1 out and a runner at first, they would be halfway. So it is a double play, and in this case, we're talking about a 4-6-3 double play. And that would end the inning for the Diamondbacks, but they would score 2 runs in the top of the first to take a 2-0 lead over the Colorado Rockies. So then we go to the bottom of the first. Robbie Ray would step in. And the first batter to lead things off for the Rockies would be Jose Reyes, the shortstop. And we just repeat the process. So I'm going to try to go a little bit faster, but not too fast. All right, we got that was a 5 there. It was a 5-4-5 was the roll. So for Reyes, remember column 5 is a lot of walks. Reyes 5 and a white die is a 4. So a column 5 and a row 4 gives you a 27. So he brings 27 to the table. Robbie Ray a 5 and a blue 5. So a 5 and a 5 gives you a 3. Total of 30 in column 5. And a 30 in column 5 is actually going to be a fly out to center field. So that's 1 away. And that brings up Charlie Blackmon. Charlie Blackmon steps in against Robbie Ray. We get a 2-1-3. So for Blackmon, a 2-1 is a 43, and there is a raised number there, so that's going to come into play. We'll talk about that as soon as I finish the other result. So a 2 and a 1 is a 43, and a 2 and a 3 is a 1. That's a total of 44 in column 2. Well, if we go to column 2, number 44, actually the raised number will not come into play because it's going to be an out. So a 44 is going to be a ground out to pitcher to first, and there's an injury involved where you miss 1 game. Batter misses 1 game. So it would not be the game he's playing. It would be the next game if you're playing a series. But it's a ground out pitcher to first. So he grounded it right back to Robbie Ray, and then he must have pulled something in his hammy or something when he was running to first because it's showing he would be injured. So that takes care of Blackmon. And we come to Nolan Arenado, number 3 hitter in the lineup against Robbie Ray. And we got a 4-2-6. So the 4 is your fielding check. So a 4-2 for Arenado is a number 1. And a 4-6 for Robbie Ray. 4 and row 6 is the second baseman. So we're going to check the second baseman for the Diamondbacks, who happens to be Chris Owings. We're going to check his fielding rating. And that fielding rating is a numeric number 1 to 5, and it's going to replace this shaded area with a number. So his rating at second base is a 3. So that becomes a 3 now. We add it to the 1 from Arenado, gives you a total of 4. And a 4 in column 4 with the infield back because nobody's on base. Anything 2 through 11 is a ground out. So in this case, it's a simple ground out to second baseman Owings, and the Rockies would go down 1-2-3 to end the inning. And that's 1 inning of play of replay baseball. Now, obviously, it doesn't take you that long if you're trying to just play it on your own, but I'm trying to do a kind of a step-by-step deal, so that's why it's taking longer. But we'll go ahead and try the top of the second at normal speed, and we'll see if we can't get this up a little bit quicker and show you what it looks like when you're playing it on your own and you're just rolling along. Pardon the pun. All right, here's Chris Owings. So I knocked him over. That's not good to do. 5-3-6. So 5-3-6. 5-3 is a 3. 5-6 is a 5. That's a total of 8 in column 5. And an 8 in column 5 is a walk. And that's, like I said, where you get a lot of your walks. So Chris Owings is on with a walk. Brings up Nick Ahmed, the shortstop. And that's another 5. 5-3-3. 5-3 is a 4. 5-3 is a 5. That's another 8. So it's another walk. So back-to-back walks by De La Rosa. Unfortunately for him, I've been finding column 5 too much. That'll bring up the catcher, Tuffy Gosowitz. This time it's a column 4, so it's a fielding check. 4-4 is an 18. And a 4-6 is the second baseman. In this case, it's LeMahieu. And we'll check LeMahieu. LeMahieu's rating is a 1. That's the best you can have. So we take the 18 from Tuffy Gosowitz and the 1 from LeMahieu, make it a 19. The infield's halfway at double play death because runners are first and second. And a 19 is a single knocked down by the fielder for an infield hit. Had they been playing back, it would have been a grounder out at first with the runners advancing, but at double play depth, he couldn't get to it. So bases are loaded with nobody out. And the pitcher card. So each pitcher is rated for their batting ability. So in this case, Robbie Ray is using batter card. He's a lefty. He's using batter card number 1. Same with De La Rosa. He was also using batter card number 1. So we've got pitcher hitting card number 1 stepping to the plate. And on column 6, which has a lot of strikeouts, if you get a 36 in column 6, that's an automatic strikeout. So you can see why the pitcher hitting cards would have so many 36s in them. But this is bases loaded and nobody out. De La Rosa to Robbie Ray. So it's a 2-3-5. 2-3 is a 2, and a 2-5 is a 2W. That is a total of 5 in column 2, and that's a strikeout. So we ignore the W because it was an out. So Robbie Ray is a strikeout victim. So he is out of there. Back to the top of the order for Ender Inciarte. Bases are still loaded with 1 out. And Inciarte, it's a 1-3-3. So a 1-3 is a 2. A 1-3 is another 2 is total of 4 in column 1. And anytime column 1 gets a 2 through 6, it is a strikeout. So De La Rosa has come back to strike out the next 2 batters. Bases are still loaded with 2 outs, but now the infield can play normal. And A.J. Pollock is up. Pollock, a 2-3-1. 2-3 is a 16. And a 2-1 is a 1. It's a 17 in column 2. And a 17 in column 2 is a strikeout with the bases empty or a fly out to center with men on base. And it would have been a check for a sac fly had there not been 2 outs already. But it's a fly to center, and De La Rosa actually pitched out of that. Bases loaded, nobody out jam, and got out of it with no runs allowed. So now we'll go ahead and finish up the presentation with the bottom of the second. Carlos Gonzalez, Gonzo, is stepping to the plate. 5-6-1. 5-6 for Gonzalez is a 3. And a 5-1 for Ray is a 2. That's a total of 5 in column 5. And that's a ground ball to third. Now there is a caveat with runners on and first base open, it would be a walk. But that's not the case. Bases are empty, so it's a simple ground ball to third. And Gonzalez is out of there. All right, here's Justin Morneau, first baseman. That's a 6-4-1. So on Morneau, a 6-4 is a 41. And on Robbie Ray, a 6-1 is a 1. That's a 42. And a 42 in column 6 is a line drive hit to left field. Let's see here. Runner advances 1 base on a single. Chance for extra bases. Roll 1 die against the outfielder's defensive rating if the die is higher, scored as a double. Now, the defensive player is going to be determined by the blue die. And in this case, if it's a 1 or a 3, it is the left fielder. A 1, 2, 3 rather. 1, 2, or 3 is the left fielder. So we're looking at the left fielder for the Diamondbacks, who happens to be Inciarte. He is a rating of 5. So we have to roll 1 die, and if it's a 6, he'll get a double. Anything else, he'll stay a single. And it's a 3, so it's just going to be a single. Since Inciarte has good range, he was able to go over and cut it off and keep it as a single. So Morneau would have a 1-out single, and that brings up the catcher, Nick Hundley. All right, we get a 5-6-3, so Nick Hundley, a 5-6 is a 1G, so that could come into play on the action chart if he reaches. It's a 1, so we take the 1 from Nick Hundley. A 6-3 off Robbie Ray is another 1. I'm sorry, a 5-3 is a 3, so we've got a total of 4 in column 5. And a 4 in column 5 is a ground ball to short, and they're at halfway because there's 1 out and a runner at first. So the result is out at second, others advance. So it's a fielder's choice in so many words. So Hundley will reach on the fielder's choice, and that goes 6-4. But he is able to beat the relay throw and keep from getting a double play. But now there are 2 outs to run at first for DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu, a 2-3-4. So a 2 and a 3 for LeMahieu is a 2. A 2 and a 4 for Robbie Ray is a 1. That's a total of 3 in column 2. And just like column 1, if you get a 2 through 6, it's a strikeout. So LeMahieu is down on strikes and there would be nothing doing for the Colorado Rockies. So that's an example. That's 2 innings of playthrough of replay baseball. And as you can see in that second inning, it went a whole lot faster. And like I said, a normal game, if you have decent pitching, it's about a half hour, but maybe 35 minutes. But more than not, the average time for me is usually about 45 minutes because especially if you're playing a National League game and you've got pinch hitters and you're changing pitchers and doing all kinds of stuff, or playing in a park like Colorado, and depends on who your pitchers are as well. If you got Clayton Kershaw going against Jake Arrieta in the games at Dodger Stadium, you might get through in a half hour. But if you've got fourth and fifth starters at Coors Field, it might be an hour. So it just depends on how many runs are scored and so forth, and also how comfortable you get with the game. So that's my presentation of Replay Baseball. It is from Replay Games, Pete Ventura. And like I said, they do have the computer version of this, and the good part about that is, A, it helps you accumulate stats. In fact, if you have the cards and the computer, you can play the game on the cards and then input the game later on the computer. Or the computer will do all these calculations for you. Once it'll determine the rolls, you have dice. They actually have a dice roller in the game, and it'll determine what the thing is. It'll automatically look on the board and tell you what the result is. And you can play against a computer opponent, or you can play both teams, depending on how you want to do that. So it's like I said, it's a really great game. I don't think it gets a whole lot of play on YouTube, so I try to give it a little bit of notoriety whenever I can. I do like to play that. I've been playing a 75 World Series replay with the Reds and Red Sox on it for about 4 or 5 games. I've also played a couple of 1957 World Series replay games. Like I said, I have the 2015 season and I also have 75 seasons. The only 2 I own. One of the downsides, if you buy the cards, is they can be rather expensive. Each of the season sets is about 50-something bucks. But the computer seasons are like $21 or $22, I think. So if you want to play a lot of seasons, the computer is probably the way to go. If you have a favorite season, then the card set is probably a good way to go as well. Since I like to play a lot of games, and whether it be payoff pitch, strat, history maker, whatever the case may be, obviously I don't have unlimited funds to buy everything I want, so I have to be selective on what I purchase. So I do get a lot of the PC games, but occasionally on eBay you can find some of these card sets fairly reasonable, which is what I did for 57 season. But the 2015 season, when I bought the game itself, that's where I got the 2015 set, because if you buy the season set, you get the game products a whole lot cheaper. It's a good combination deal, and if you watch, they'll have sales from time to time on different things. So that's kind of it from here. I'm almost up to 50 minutes now, and I don't want to ramble too much longer. But I did want to give this game some looks, and if anybody's got any questions about the game, certainly leave them in the questions in the comments, and I will do my best to respond. I didn't want to do this live. I want to do this on a tape basis, a delay basis, because I wanted to be able to do this without having to stop and answer questions or talk in chatter form, because it would distract me. Knowing me, it would kind of distract me from what I'm trying to do. And plus, there's other people with other channels that have live games going on right now, so I didn't want to compete with that either. So I'm recording this on Saturday around noon on June I guess it's the 3rd. And I'm not sure when I'm going to post this, but I might not post it until a couple days from now. I'm not sure. But I did want to get it out there, and I'll be doing some more on other games as well. So I'm trying to get back a little bit more to what my original intent for the channel was, which is baseball demos, which is to demonstrate different games and how to play it and the pros and cons of the games, and let you as the viewers give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, or if you were curious about trying something before you bought it and see it in action, that's another opportunity via this video to do that. So that's about it from here. We're at 50 minutes, and I want to cut it off at that point. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation of Replay Baseball, the sample playthrough, and maybe some discussion of the logic of the game. And until next time, we will see you down the road.